Okay, first I want to congratulate you. Holland, Dozier, Holland.
Thank you,
On
Frankie.
your RockWalk induction.
Thank you. That's awful nice of you.
How do you guys feel today?
Feel great.
I'm excited because I think it's just a very unique situation. You know, I always thought in terms of the singers and the rock and rollers and
Band, heavy metals,
That you would
and
be
rock.
included in that?
Yeah, I think it's quite an honor.
Now, you began as a singer, right?
Mm,
You did.
Yeah, I did.
You began as the singer.
Correct.
And who did the three of you, who did you listen to as children when you were growing up, and who influenced you to want to do this?
well,
No person influenced me per se. It just, you have to think in terms of how we grew up in an area where, there wasn't a lot of wealthy people around, especially in our family structure. And I was just thinking in terms of what can I do to make a living.
Did you have a musical background, like a musical family?
Yes, my mother could sing. My grandfather had what you call a super ear, which I did not inherit. My brother inherited our grandfather's super ear. I inherited my mother's voice, and so I just saw articles where singers were making, at that time, a few successful singers were making like $250,000 a year. So I said, well, I can sing. Maybe I can make a living doing that, But I didn't do a good job at making a living doing that because at the time the songwriters were the ones, songwriters and producers, they were really the ones making the money.
So you joined up with Lamont to start writing songs.
Brian did.
Brian.
no, I did.
Okay, you came after him at Motown, right?
No, he came. I mean, he actually started with Berry Gordy first.
Right.
And
then you came like 2 years later.
yeah, something like that, right?
And started. So you were the one that was more kind of into the mechanics of it all, the
Right.
engineering.
Right, absolutely.
So you did not have a desire to sing, to be a singer?
Well,
I know you did some background.
right, absolutely. But earlier in my life, I did a little singing, but as I got older, I didn't particularly like singing. I didn't like standing out in front of people. I was made me a little too nervous to stand out there and sing in front of people. So I kind of, started kind of playing the piano and trying to write lyrics and write melodies.
So when the three of you teamed up and you started writing together, Eddie, you were the main lyricist at that time?
Correct.
How did you come about to how did you guys decide who was gonna do what in the songwriting process?
Well, I mean, to a certain degree, maybe I did. For the simple reason is that Brian and Lamont both, could write lyrics and write melodies and produce records, My skills basically was in the songwriting and teaching artists the song. And I just felt that if I were to write the lyrics, we could end up writing a lot of songs at a fast rate because the lyrics, in my opinion, is what was slowing Brian Lamont down. If they were slowed down at all, it was writing the lyrics because it's a very tedious thing. Melodies, they could do 10 or 15 a day if they chose.
So did you study poetry or anything like that
No.
to pull from?
No, fortunately for me, it was on-the-job training. I basically just started writing lyrics on a piece of paper, songs that I'd heard before that I thought were written pretty well. I would write them on a piece of paper and I would study the structures, and then I would go to people who had some knowledge of poems and I would ask them, questions about how do you start a poem, what's the structure, what's the theme, and then I would go and practice writing myself, and go back to these people who could write poems and ask them what did they think of this, whatever I had written. And in the criteria, I would always ask them this, tell them this. I said, don't tell me what it is you like about it. Tell me what you don't like about it. Because I noticed that people had a tendency not to want to be honest with you, not to want to hurt your feelings. So I just developed that. And I also, if they tried to, for an example, sometimes they say, well, what do you mean by such and such a thing? I say, if I have to explain it to you, then I'm not doing the job.
I've
So
heard that
that's
before.
right. So this is what I use, and it was like on the job training,
Frankie, need to have you move right about here for me. Correct, thank you.
Okay, Lamont, when you were writing a song, did you know ahead of time what artist was going to be performing it?
No, not really, unless we specifically sat down at the piano and say, well, I'm going to do this, or come up with a melody or something for, say, the Supremes or something. But most of the time, that came later, after we had started or had started a melody or some type of idea or title or something. And then we figured out later that it all depends on who needed songs too at the time. So it was like,
Did you ever just have too much?
it's a double-edged sword. It was like at times when we knew we had to complete a project on an artist, but we would go after it. But then again, when I sat down, I would just be writing just in randomly, and coming up with ideas, but nothing specific all the time.
I know that you also wrote for artists like Eric Clapton and Phil Collins.
Yeah, this was later on though, in the 80s, and 90s.
Did you, when you started working with those artists, did you have to think in a different way, because instead of it being more of an R&B Motown sound, it was more of a rock or pop?
Not really, because those people are big fans of Motown and fans of what we had done back in the 60s. So they didn't want to hear any pop songs necessarily. They wanted to hear what it is that I did, back in the 60s with Brian and Eddie. So it was that type of thing that I brought to the table, so to speak, and writing with Phil and with Eric.
So you have to also take in consideration that the songs that the three of us was doing, very few of them were really R&B, so to speak, bass. They were always pop bass, but we just had a way of singing them. In other words, if we knew that we were working with a particular singer, say Levi Stubbs, who had a very tough voice when he wanted to, very smooth, I could teach him the song for him to deliver based on his abilities. But the songs were basically very pop based, they were just unique. That's what made them so very, very unique, is that what gave them the so-called R&B feel, if any, was the rhythm. If you strip it all down and start playing it, those melodies are very pop.
They are.
Yeah.
You see, but if you put the rhythm to it and the production, then that's where the R&B flavor came in, which is what made those songs so dynamic.
Then you get a little gospel in there. You hear that. You hear a little jazz with the with some of the chord structure. Then you could hear some symphonic chords at times. We were big on gospel and symphonic stuff because we had that type of upbringing, individually, in church.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Had to.
And also a criteria at home was to listen to classical music.
See, if there was an album done some time ago on the music, symphonic orchestration, and you would have never been able to tell those songs if you didn't know what they were. Because
the London Philharmonic.
Yeah, they just went right to the chords.
Yeah.
and it was totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, I was impressed listening to it because it was just totally different.
Well, I was speaking to someone earlier about your music, and we thought of the word timeless, because even now, you can listen to this, and it almost could fit in at any time.
Yeah. They say.
I mean, you don't get tired of
You're right.
this. You don't get tired of
It's
it.
because of the melody line. It's the melody line and the
So how
chord
did you know
structure.
that that was the combination, or that was the key that you needed? It was
Well,
it worked?
you know what? You know, creative people, you know, in all dimensions, when something hits them, you know, it's like something very intangible, you know. But when you strike that right chord, or that right feeling, it touches you. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's artist painting a painting. You know, he knows or she knows when that painting is right. You'll take an artist who's a painter. They will paint the same painting over and over and over again until it feels right to them. You know, and it's the same thing with a song. Or say a carpenter is the same way. He has to keep working with that wood until it speaks to him. You know, it's the same thing as music.
So some songs took a lot longer to write than others.
For me, not for them. Because what they would do, see, Brian and Lamont are extremely unique, extremely, you know. They would go to a piano and start playing some chords, and right away, if it didn't hit them, they discarded that, went to the next, discarded it, went to the next, rapidly. All they had to do was want to write a song or be in the mood to write. And they would just, after the first maybe 16 bars, they knew right away. So when a certain 16 bars would hit one or the other, they would both move on it to finish the song off. If it took both, sometimes it didn't, you know, it just depends.
Now, Brian, I know you started your own record company, and you started your own record company, and you also, but you went into, you were a singer also, a songwriter, an engineer and producer, and which one of these was the most fulfilling for you?
Songwriting.
Songwriting?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I had a certain euphoric feeling from doing it, from writing the song, because certain things I would feel about a love situation, or how I felt at the time, you know what I mean? It gave me a great feeling, you know what I mean? Great feeling.
Now, did you start your own record companies because you would have more creative control that way?
Well, to some degree that's true, but it's not quite as simple as that. You know, it just ended up being a misunderstanding with where we were at the time. One thing led to another, you know.
Brian, you were a piano player?
Yeah.
Did you train
No.
in piano? Self-taught?
Self-taught. Yeah.
How long
Self-taught.
did that take?
Not long.
No?
No, not long.
Just had an...
Yeah, right. It didn't take long. A person, if you have some type of ear, you'll be able to pick out the notes and whatnot. You'll be able to pick the notes out and play the chords and whatnot. You'll be able to do it. It wouldn't take long, you know.
You still have your first piano?
My first thoughts of my first thoughts of my piano. Yeah, but no, I don't. No, I don't have the same piano now.
Now, Eddie, you became an A&R man, right?
Correct.
Now, what would you look for in a new artist?
And a new artist,
If you were looking to sign someone, or you, let's say you ventured out into Detroit and wanted to find someone new to work with, what would you look for?
well, when I was A&R at the time, you're speaking of at Motown, well, I basically had to consider the philosophy of the company, and one thing about the company is that they not only wanted artists that could sing well, but artists that had the right temperament, the right personality, attitude, all of that was just extremely important as the artists themselves. If it was an artist with a great vocal talent, but the personality and the other ingredients weren't there, we wouldn't sign them, not at all.
Did how an artist looked make a difference back then? Because now you've got the age of
Well,
video and.
To some degree, but just like I heard a guy who was a movie producer years ago, he said, looks can be faked. Would he mean that you can change a person's look around by just the right makeup, the right clothes, the right this, the right that? So it looks to a point, but that wasn't necessarily the main criteria.
So what advice can you give to artists that are just starting out in this industry or have been struggling in this industry?
In this business now, in this year, you know, I tell you, that's a tough one. The business has changed so tremendously, and I would have to talk to them a long time to find out whether or not they should go into this business, because years ago, record companies were run by record people, music people. That's no longer the case. It's mostly accountants, lawyers run run the business now, and it's a whole different ball game. The mentality is different. I mean, that would take forever to explain that, and plus they would probably be furious. But that's a tough one. If my thing is this, is that I would try to get them to get an education or to find a trade or something else while they're pursuing music, because if they're that good at it and their desire is that strong, it'll meet its own level.
Right.
But to try to, like we would do, we threw all caution to the wind. Say the music is what we want to do. We had parents would say, "Well, you sure you don't want to go to this nice school down here and to do this? Are you sure you don't want to get a job to blah blah?" You know what I mean? We threw caution to the wind. I wouldn't really advise that to anyone.
It's more real. It was more real and raw back then, I think. Now it's more kind of canned and.
Right.
Now, with you learning the recording engineering, it was a lot different back then. And it's evolved a lot.
A lot.
Have you evolved with it?
No, to be honest with you, no. But I'm fascinated with like the Pro Tools, which I find the most unique of all the engineering components. Is very, very, very good and very sophisticated, and it's very. You have to go kind of take a few courses, but to have somebody really sit down and teach you that is very, and I love it. But I love it though.
Are you still writing now?
Oh yeah, we write every day. I think we write every day, really, some form or another.
Not with the same urgency
Right.
as we did years ago, because it was a lot more challenging.
By now just kicking back and just, we did good.
Well, yeah, to some degree that may be true, but if you really love the business the way we love it, you still want to be a part of it. You still think in terms of doing things that's a part of it, whether it's wanting to do movies or wanting to do plays or whatever. It's just that you don't have the same urgency as you did before trying to write a single necessarily. The music business is much broader now.
One last question for you. I've heard recently that they're going to be performing some of your songs on American Idol. How does that feel after all these years to have young kids performing songs you wrote so years ago?
Well, they already performed.
They did that already.
Oh, they did it?
They did.
Oh, yeah.
And Lamont
yeah.
was one of the judges.
Yeah, that was 3
Oh,
weeks
then
ago. That was
And
about a
my
month ago.
paperwork was from before that.
Right.
Yeah, right,
That's been a month ago.
Month ago.
But it
Yeah.
was but I'm gonna let Lamont speak on this. But I would say this: I watched the program only because Lamont was on the program. Actually, I had no idea that they were really playing Motown songs. People just say, "Lamont, your boy is on TV. He's on American
Right,
Idol."
that's right.
And they live. I
I
said,
got-
"Oh, great!" So, I was getting calls, and I
Yeah,
tuned it in because it was him. But I never really watched the program, to be honest with you. And I was very excited when I said, "My goodness, these kids are singing these Motown songs, and they sound good." I mean, they're singing these songs, and the people are very, very talented. So I was impressed with that, to think that kids, well, they're grown, but to me, they're kids. To even think of those songs or even be aware of them, I say, my goodness, you know what I mean? That was fascinating to me.
Yeah, I know Lamont had a great time. But he
Yeah,
could talk
we
about
had
it.
big fun doing the show. The kids themselves had did their own little twist to the songs. They had ways of expressing themselves with the songs and having fun rearranging and making the songs their own. And they had a great teacher. There's a great teacher, the music person that is very good at teaching the kids the songs. And you have to remember these kids are amateurs too, and they didn't have much trainings, and this is their first time out. And each week they get stronger and stronger and stronger. And at the time that they were singing these songs of ours, they had developed in such a strong way. And they wanted to impress me because I was there, that they could do
I would
these
imagine
songs.
they would.
Because some of these songs are not the easiest songs in the world to sing.
They're not. Not at all.
And they were very up about it, and they wanted to show me that they could do these songs, and they did a very good job, and I had a great time.
Well, I want to congratulate you guys on today, and you guys have had so many accolades. This is just another one.
Right, there's another one. But I appreciate you saying
Thank
that.
you.
though. Frankie, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait. I want you to stay right there.
Oh,